SRC at the University of Zimbabwe, and interestingly the president of the SRC refused to be part of those demonstrations. So not everybody at the university, it seems, in the leadership was for this demonstration, but it's all played out. In fact, the university had closed the university down, and this was a tactic, a ZANU-PF tactic that they used. If I remember correctly, I think it was after the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, the very first one in Harare, and the students went on the rampage in the city. And after that, Robert Mugabe and his regime, whenever anything important happened, they shut the university in advance to silence the voices of the students. I guess this is going to have to change.
Well, you know, we are moving into a dispensation. And in this dispensation, we are going to make sure that Zimbabwe is run in a proper way. I want to tell you now that there's one thing that we are going to fight for as Zimbabweans. I would say two things rather. The first thing is reforms and a political level playing field. Investment is not a question. Investment will start flowing into Zimbabwe at the moment. Right now, I'm telling you, investors are already lined up. They want to come and put their money in there. But there is one aspect that we have got to fight for. The youth who have been in the streets and who are still in the streets, we need to be in the presidium. We need power. And I will continue to say that now the youth need power. We need to be in the position of government. We need to be in the positions of authority. We are not going to be people that are the go-to guys when you want to commit murder, the people that you use when you want to do certain acts of political violence. We are not that. We are looking for a dispensation, and that is the job that we have got to do from now onwards, to make sure that our voice is heard and we run our country and we retire all the old men that have presided over our misery, be it in opposition and ZANU-PF. We have got an agenda and we will make sure that we win on that agenda.
And that is a powerful point. The governor, Kundituotu, on Twitter says, "We don't care about the past deeds of Chiwenga or ED. We are concerned about the now, the departure of RG and the possibilities of tomorrow. Today is not the day for negativity, skepticism or pessimism." So I guess many people want to be optimistic and look forward to the future. And that future is for young people. There's a generational issue here, wouldn't you say, Mr. Moy?
Yeah, there's a lot of optimism. And I'm glad to see that a lot of the visuals that we are watching, there's a lot of young people there. I haven't seen any old person, which means that the young people, especially the born frees, there was one who was talking on TV. My colleague sitting here also is one of those. I think for them it's a dawn of a new era where they will now experience a change of government and the expectations of the government that will come in. So the government that is coming in, they have a lot to, the shoes are big that they have to fill.
One has been seeing images and campaigns of young people like Advocate Mahere in Zimbabwe, and I wonder, are we going to start to see many more young politicians now saying, this is our time, this is our era?
Okay, what we have been fighting for and what we are continuing to fight for. First, we have got the leaders of the revolution. This revolution did not start today, it started a very long time back. And we have got the people that we mentioned, Fadzayi Mahere, Promise Mkwananzi, Esilu Mumba, this flag, Pastor Ivan. Whatever dispensation that we go into tomorrow, going forward, as we prepare the country for fresh elections or whatever the case might be, those people should not be left out of it. Those people, their voice is very important. They represent what we want. They represent our wishes. They represent our desires. And we are going to make sure that we are going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that the voices of the youth is taken care of. But there is another constituency that I stand for and that I'm willing to fight for again. The diaspora. We sustained Zimbabwe when Mugabe thrown into the dogs. We made sure that we went out of the country to come and work in very disappointing conditions in most cases, to make sure that we sustain the families back home. They invest the amount of money that we put back home to sustain the lives and the government, and because there was no other source of foreign currency. We, the people in the diaspora, all have to be noticed. We need our own constituency, we need our own political office. So these are the demands that we have as we go into the new dispensation. There is nothing that is going to take off. If we have got to take off, we have got to realize the youth and the positive effect of the diaspora. And those are the battles that I've said, and with my other colleagues that we are going to be fighting, and we are ready to take them on to make sure that we are recognized and we are given our space accordingly.
Is the MDC ready for this new wave? Because the politics of before today is changed, I would imagine, as a result of what's happened.
I think we'll also learn with the others as we go what they are bringing in. But I think top of the agenda, as my colleague is saying, will be the diaspora vote. There is a lot of Zimbabweans that were displaced, who are out of the country, and we are moving closer to the elections. I think the PVR system should be exported to where there is a lot of Zimbabweans like South Africa, so that they are able to register where they are and also be able to vote where they are and when they are ready. Because what I see now is a voluntary repatriation of Zimbabweans. No one will tell the next Zimbabwean person that let's go home. They are going to go back and be the first to experience the change that has just taken place.
What can the Zimbabwe be like for these young people that we're seeing? I mean, they can't even imagine it because they've only ever lived through the Mugabe era. What do they hope they'll see in the future? Is it just getting a job?
Well, the dream of the young Zimbabwean is being able to sleep without thinking that there is somebody who is tapping his phone, who is going to knock at his door, who is going to drag him out for expressing himself. That's number one. Freedom of expression overrides anything else. It's a fundamental human right. You might have no food, but you must be able to express yourself, because food comes naturally. There's got to be raised. There are some other factors, natural factors that surround the issue of food. But freedom of expression, that is guaranteed. That is the future that we want to move in, where we are able to express ourselves and where we do not feel that there is one person who imposes a certain socio-legal order that does not suit us. So that is where we are looking at jobs and all the other things and investment. Those will come. But the primary and fundamental thing that Robert Mugabe has never allowed us to have is our freedoms. And we have now claimed our freedoms. And as we go, I will tell you right now that there's going to be a problem also in the politics of the nation. Remember, the MDC was not formed because there were no political parties in Zimbabwe. It was formed simply because ZANU-PF had failed. And if ZANU-PF is going to reform, as they are saying now, they are preaching reform, they want to do things right. I tell you that Zimbabwe will become a one-party state. People are not really interested in, in parties. They are interested in their livelihood, in making sure that they get what they want and they are ready to go.
As a gesture of goodwill, Emmerson Mnangagwa must be feeling the pressure, I guess, to free some of these people that were jailed for some of these frivolous charges. He's going to have to act and act quickly if people are to believe his agenda.
If he is genuine, all the people that were arrested during the course of Mugabe's rule, they will all be freed. I think he will have to offer a blanket amnesty and release them all. Otherwise, if he continues to keep them in jail, then we will not understand what is happening. There is a lot of things that he will have to make right that were made wrong, because 37 years is a very long time.
Are there other leaders on the continent who are watching these events unfold and wondering, I've been in power just as long as Robert Mugabe, must I be concerned, must I be worried?
Of course, we have got just closer to home, we have got in Uganda, the man, he had previously indicated that he doesn't want to retire when he can no longer walk. But we see him mistempering the constitution. And we are warning him to say Africa is rising. And believe you me, his day is going to come. If he was somebody else, he should just step down. In West Africa, we have got a lot of them that are really troublesome. In Equatorial Guinea, in Cameroon, we are sending a message. And the good thing about the Zimbabwean message, it is a dispensation change can be achieved peacefully. That's one thing that people have got to realize. We had more than 1 million Zimbabweans in Harare, in one small city, that were marching, but no shoe was stolen, no peg, no needle was stolen, nothing was vandalized. So a lot of African nations have got to learn from the Zimbabwean experience and understand that a message can still be sent and be effective without smoke or anything burning or tires burning. So it's a lot of things that can be learned from Zimbabwe. And as always, we're resilient people. We are not cowards. We always rise to the occasion.
We're seeing unrest in Togo. He must be watching this and saying that, if Robert Mugabe can go, is it time for me to think about moving on? Because the citizens there will be emboldened by what they've seen here.
I think what happened in Zimbabwe will encourage a lot of people across the continent to learn from it, as my colleague is saying. Because dictators, I think their time is past now. We are living in a new era. We need people to abide by the Constitution. If the Constitution says you must be in power for 2 years, 2 terms, leave your 2 terms and step down. We have seen, we are even beaten by the West. They are keeping to their 2 terms and moving on. But in Africa, people want to change constitutions to cling to power. I think they should learn, and it is a lesson to all Africans, to say when you need something, you don't have to be violent. You just need to go out en masse. Don't break anything, but demand what you want and you get it.
So will there be a reformation of what we understand as democracy and democratic processes? Will there be new parties, for example, do you think, as a result of what we've seen today?
Well, you know why we have had so many parties coming into Zimbabwe? It was a result of fatigue and lack of direction. The opposition was fatigued. It never had any new ideas. And everybody would say, if I cannot vote for him, then I'd rather vote for myself. That's why we have got 70 parties in Zimbabwe. But all that is going away now. We are only going to remain with 2 or 3 parties that are going to be serious in terms of developing the country. And the dispensation that we are looking at is going to be very, very interesting. Zimbabweans are, they are going back to make sure that things are getting done, reforms and free and fair elections. Food on the table, if God blesses us with rains and all that, that is how we want to live. We are not really interested in a lot of things that were being thrown on our lives.
So, Kumamisha, in the rural areas, perhaps that's where most of the oppression happened because it wasn't visible. And that these youth brigades, the ZANU-PF youth brigades, ran a campaign of terror in those areas. What will we see there now with these images in Harare? Because Harare, they were always kind of able to, as much as they could, but in the rural areas, they had no opportunity to even begin to resist in the same way that we're seeing here. That's going to be a complete mineshaft.
I think that is something that they'll have, the coming government will have to deal with. Because green bombers were a very, very bad sight, and a lot of people suffered in their hands. And we are glad that the war veterans have reformed. They are now working with the people, and that is a very good sign. And the other thing is that as we move into this new dispensation, the country has got no currency as we speak. So you can see the mountain that the new government has to climb. Because at the end of the day, the Zimbabwe will have to move away from the rand, move away from the dollar, and have its own currency. So there should be policies in place that will resuscitate the economy, bring investment, and make sure that the country gets back on its feet and becomes the SADC's breadbasket that it was.
Yeah, I can't translate some of the things that are coming through here, but they are being quite insulting to the former president and his wife, and it is quite sad to see actually that it's descended to this. But I guess it speaks volumes to how much pain, suffering that they've had to endure for so long.
You know, Edgar Tekere said, you put people under pressure, you use your forces to silence the masses. I do not think that will last forever. One day the masses will rise and you are going to regret it. Mugabe has seen it alive. And you know the good thing about this whole experience is that Mugabe is in his senses, he is alive. Grace is alive. Chatunga, Bona, and every one of them, they are alive. Joao is alive to see this moment. That is on its own is quite extraordinary. And we are happy to see that they are going to at least, we don't want them to be repatriated from Zimbabwe. We want him to be able to go into Parinyata Hospital and get treatment there. That is the wish that we have for his family.
Instead of Singapore.
We don't want him to go to Singapore. We are going to show him how should a nation be governed. And I do not, I'm angry that he had to take us this far, but I'm also ready to forgive him and say, old man, you made your mistake. We leave it there. We preach reconciliation, and let's make sure that you give us the spaces you have said, and we will build a better country for everybody.
We spoke about the diaspora and the contributions, the billions of rands that have been sent home And I think it was something like in the order of about 12% of the country's GDP were remittances from outside the country. Will we start to see the diaspora going home as a result of what we're seeing today?
Like I said, that there will be voluntary repatriation. I think Beatrice Mtetwa should actually get ready for an influx, because a lot of people that I spoke to, just a few minutes after the announcement was made, my phone call was receiving calls left, right and center. And people are so happy. I received calls as far as Botswana. People are saying we are going back home. One person, the former ambassador of Zimbabwe to Australia, Jacqueline Zambile, she also called me shouting, saying, I'm going back home. She's here currently in South Africa. She was saying, I'm going back home. I'm going tomorrow, I'm going home. So you can see that excitement. I think Beatrice Mtetwa should actually get ready, because there could be an influx.
And the pessimists, they're going to struggle to rein in this enthusiasm and this hope. I mean, this is a force now with a momentum.
Yeah, well, we had pseudo-analysts on TV each and every day, discouraging people from marching. Their analysis eventually became their paralysis, as we witness events now. We have told them that this is not the moment of ZANU-PF. They wanted to hide under the pretext that this is being done to benefit ZANU-PF alone. It was a Zimbabwean moment. It was never about ZANU-PF. Mugabe has become the stumbling block to the whole nation and the region and the global space at large. So they've got egg on their face. Zimbabweans have risen to the occasion, and we have made it. And now we have claimed we have claimed our independence, and we are ready to work for the country. We appeal to Zimbabweans. The one who has got mortar must bring mortar. The one who has got a brick must bring a brick. We build our Zimbabwe for the better.
All right. It looks like that's Pastor Evans Mawarire. I wonder if we can't upsound this. He's just gone. That was Pastor Evans Mawarire, who was with the people, celebrating on the streets. And it's people like him, Linda Masarira, yes, Hudson Zamara.
Of course.
They now have their place, their efforts, because they stepped forward when people were afraid to.
Of course. I think that now they've been vindicated, and we are going to join in to make sure that they get influence in the new dispensation, because it doesn't make sense for them to speak up and be in this journey so much that they do not have the political sphere or the political muscle to be able to influence change, so that we can begin to work together as Zimbabweans. And we really honor them, and we also want to extend gratitude to the war veterans. They stood by their guns. They said Mugabe will fall, and nobody wanted to believe them. Chris Muchanga was up and down convincing people that there is the time Zimbabweans would have to go back home. White, black, yellow, Indian, you name it, all the colors. They are all welcome to come and...
What was the shift for the war veterans? Because once they took a position, you almost saw a shift taking place, and that maybe in the end, the firing of MS Mnangagwa was the catalyst. But when did the war veterans see the light, inverted commas?
Okay, the war veterans started to see the light around about 2013, 2015, immediately after elections. They had hoped that after winning elections in 2013, they would have one of their own as the leader. But Mugabe had outmaneuvered them, and he chased away Maimujuru. Then he came to the extent of chasing them. They chased all of the war veterans leaders, and they saw now this man is not working for the good of us. Then they started attacking. They went into attack mode. That is when Mugabe lost his support base, and he was so much of a fool to think that he could survive without the war veterans, because the war veterans have got a legacy that is respected by almost everyone in Zimbabwe, because they are the founding fathers of the country. They are respected for that.
We're going to leave it for the time being. Francis, there's so much happening on many continents. I can imagine the UK is erupting even now.
Yeah, so we have scenes from Pretoria in our own country. We have outpourings in Hillbrow, and we're going to show you some of the incredible scenes from Hillbrow very shortly. But first, let's take you quickly back to Harare to speak to Beatrice Mtetwa, who is a Zimbabwean lawyer for human rights, and she was actually held in detention by officials from President Robert Mugabe's regime. So, Beatrice, if if you can hear me, firstly, your reaction to today's announcement.
Well, I mean, it is exciting times, and we are obviously celebrating, but obviously we should not look at what...
All right, we've lost Beatrice Mtetwa. We'll try and get her back on the line live from Harare, and somebody who was tortured in detention. So let's speak to our reporter now. Hasina Gori took to the streets of Johannesburg, mainly Hillbrow. So just tell me some of the scenes that you were seeing not a short while ago.
Thank you so much, Francis. It was quite surreal out on the streets of Yeovil and Hillbrow this evening. We drove through the suburbs, and on every crossing, there were people on the streets cheering very, very loudly. There was dancing, singing, stopping traffic, dancing with the Zimbabwean flag. A lot of excitement. Some of them were very shocked at the fact that they never thought that this day would happen and they would live to see this. So it was a lot of excitement, a lot of cheering, a lot of them, crying in happiness as well. And these were the scenes that we saw. They stopped a lot of traffic.
Let's just stop you there, because we have some of those images. So just keep on describing as we look at that jubilation. And remember, this is not in Zimbabwe. This is on the streets of Hillbrow near Johannesburg tonight.
As you can see, they stopped buses and cars. They danced on top of some of these cars, cheering with them. People got along with them. They hooted as they went along. There was one scene that was quite interesting, was people took a shirt that had Mugabe's face on it and burnt it alight, and everyone was booing the shirt. So it was this kind of sentiment that that was coming out from there. A lot of happiness, a lot of thankfulness to God that this happened. That's the scene that I was describing just now, of them burning that T-shirt. And you can just
see. We haven't seen anything like this in South Africa, where there's more tolerance of dissent. If you don't like President Robert Mugabe, you can speak out. But I certainly haven't seen anything like that.
It was quite interesting to see. It was the first time I've actually seen Zimbabweans, come out in protest like this in South Africa as well. And it was on not just one street. It was on almost 2 or 3 different streets in Hillbrow as well as in Yeovil. And a lot of them saying that now they maybe be able to go back home. There was a sense of hope and joy that maybe I'll be able to return back home, rebuild my country, and be a part of this process.
So we're talking about millions in this country. Was there a sense that this became a meeting point, and then Zimbabweans told other Zimbabweans, come here, because it's not like Harare where everyone just poured out onto the streets. Was Hillbrow becoming something of a little epicenter for the celebrations today?
It feels like it was, that people knew this is where I would feel at home. This is where I'd find my men, my commoners. They would be here celebrating with me. So let me come out here and share the sentiment. And they were very excited to speak to us. And you would see from the people that we spoke to that one man had his son with him, and he said, wave to the cameras and say hello to a new Zimbabwe, which was quite nice. And they were just excited to share their sentiments with us.
All right, so we're bringing you scenes from a little earlier from the streets of Hillbrow, where traffic definitely looks severely affected by those celebrations. We showed you scenes outside the Zimbabwean embassy in Pretoria as well, where Zimbabweans living in South Africa, some of them wanting to go home but living here for various reasons, celebrating. Tell me a bit more, Hasina, about what they were saying about that possibility of going home. Is that a strong wish among many of these Zimbabweans?
Many of them that we spoke to, uttered the same sentiment. Many of them said it's time to go home maybe. This was from young and old. There was an older man who said, maybe I can go home now and work in my dad's business. So it's a sense of like, I can return to rebuild something that we've left behind, because we had to come to South Africa and, make a life here. So now maybe it's time to go back home now.
Let's see if we can hear what some of the people were saying to you earlier.
No, I'm very excited. It's like the birth of Jesus that came to the day. I'm so excited to an extreme. I can't explain my feelings. It's a very good thing to hear from the president. He actually did the right thing that was supposed not to take so long. He should have not dragged his legs. He should have done this before, maybe 4 years back or 3 years back, when he saw that he's whispering, he cannot go on. He should have left the country and said, I'll surrender.
Look at me. Say hi to the new Zimbabwe. How are you feeling?
is gone.
Yeah, we're feeling happy after 7 years.
After 35 years.
That's it.
Yeah, we are very happy. I don't know what to say, but I'm very, very happy. It's finally gone. Yes, we are going to Zimbabwe.
We are going back to Zimbabwe. We are very happy today. After 37 years,
I'm good, man. I'm very grateful. This is a great moment for me. Now I can finally go home, look after my parents' business now. I'm very happy. Yes.
I'm so very happy. I will go home. I don't know what to say. I'm happy. I don't know what to say. Thank you.
What a time to be alive. We are thankful. We never knew this day would come. Happy Independence Day.
Zimbabwe, we thank you.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord. We thank you that Mugabe has resigned today. Today is our 21st anniversary. We thank you, God. We praise Him.
All right, scenes from Hillbrow near Johannesburg, and the reaction is just pouring in. Let's go back to Beatrice Mtetwa, who is a Zimbabwean lawyer for human rights. Beatrice, we tried you earlier for your initial reaction, and let's just set this up, that you were actually held in detention by the regime, the outgoing regime. Just start with your reaction and then tell us about some of your previous experiences.
Well, I mean, like most other human rights defenders, I've gone through the mill with the ZANU-PF, and, I've gone through all the excesses where you get locked up, where you get abused, where you get prosecuted for nothing, basically, other than doing your job. But, we are where we are. We are celebrating. It's a celebration that should be done with extreme caution, because Robert Mugabe was just, a cog in one of the many balls that make up ZANU-PF. And the ZANU-PF edifice remains intact. All the structures that he put in place remain intact. And as we go forward, those edifices will come back to haunt us. So my hope is that as we celebrate, we'll also be looking at how to dismantle those structures, and that those who will be coming in to replace him will understand that as Zimbabweans, we want things to happen differently.
Well, what about Emmerson Mnangagwa, who seems set to be the next leader, called the Crocodile, in some parts of Zimbabwe, even known as the Butcher, so he wouldn't be a poster boy for human rights?
This is why I'm saying Robert Mugabe was just one facet of a very big structure called ZANU-PF, which remains intact. The very soldiers who are celebrating today for being our liberators have been part of that system. And if Emmerson Mnangagwa had not been kicked out of ZANU-PF, we wouldn't even be saying this, because all the people who've been fighting Robert Mugabe in the past 2 years or so have been doing so because they were kicked out of ZANU-PF. None of them said, I am not going to be part of this system because I don't agree with how they do things. They were kicked out. If they had not been kicked out, things would be going on as normal. So we should be looking at how to make sure that we dismantle how things have been done in the past, and how those who realize that doing things this way results in you being kicked out the way Robert Mugabe has been kicked out, and how going forward we can ensure that our leaders respect the rights that Zimbabweans are supposed to enjoy in terms of their constitution.
Ms. Mtetwa, so what you're saying is this wasn't a democratic outpouring, and what do you think of the analysis that in fact the general, Chiwenga, was set to be targeted by Robert Mugabe? There were rumors that he could also be removed. So that is the reason why the army stepped in, which again shows this wasn't the people rising up. Having said that, however, isn't Zimbabwe fundamentally changed by the people finding their voice, by what we've seen in recent days?
The one saving grace of this whole episode is that the people came out in their numbers and they said, anything that smells democratic, we will support to the hills. So whoever comes in now will know that the people now know that they have power behind them. They don't need soldiers to help them understand that they have power behind them. I don't think any of us should be under the illusion that what has happened was being done because those who have capacity to change things were doing it for the people of Zimbabwe. No, this is something that was being done in-house. Fortunately, the people came on board. So my hope is that going forward, the people will remain on top and they will set the agenda and they will say no to excesses, no to human rights abuses, no to denial of basic rights that the Constitution says we are entitled to, and that laws will be realigned so that we have free and fair elections as we go into the next elections, and that whoever leads us will never take us down the Mugabe path again.
That was my final question. Are free and fair elections where Zimbabweans, the voice of ordinary Zimbabweans are heard, are those possible and as soon as next year?
Next year, no. Because on the ground, all the necessary alignments have not been done. The playing field is far from being level. So we definitely cannot talk of free and fair elections next year because that simply would be impossible. We are only 2 months away from less than 2 months away from next year. So we really cannot hope for free and fair elections as has been envisaged if we look at the period that remains. And if we're going to have elections at all, as had been envisaged, maybe in July or so of next year, it is unlikely that we would have done the groundwork necessary to make a level playing field. And here I must stop and say that actually Mr. Mnangagwa was Minister of Justice, and a lot of the realignments were supposed to be done by his ministry. And he didn't do those realignments to make sure that the laws comply with what the Constitution says. I can't imagine what would make him suddenly want to fast-track those when in 4 years he actually had not sought to fast-track them. So free and fair elections in 2018, no, that's not going to happen. All
right. Thank you so much for your perspective.
Okay.
As someone who's been held in detention by ZANU-PF, the party saying the structures are still there. So this is a time for celebration, but cautious celebration. That was Beatrice Mtetwa, a lawyer for human rights. And we'll bring you scenes again from Joburg streets, from Pretoria. We've been showing you Harare. Let's just see some of the reaction coming in on social media very quickly tonight. Kandai Biti, someone tell me that I'm alive and that I'm not dreaming, that I will not wake up in the nightmare, that the dictator is still in control of the country with the blue roof. I'm not understanding that analogy, but saying that he's happy. The king is gone. Long live the king. We heard from him, Evan Mawarire, earlier, the leader of the This Flag movement. My fellow citizens, Robert Gabriel Mugabe has resigned. The journey has been a long and hard one, but we did it. I can't stop crying. And we saw that, saying the future beckons. All right, Chief Whip of the ANC, Jackson Mthembu, our own, the resignation of Robert Mugabe has ignited excitement akin to Freedom Day in Zimbabwe. We hope and pray for a better Zimbabwe. So that's one of the voices from the ANC. All right, and let's get a final word from Hasina. You were telling us what was happening on the streets of Hillbrow. Maybe we can bring back some of those visuals and just wrap up the overall sentiment and some of those things that you will remember, like the burning of a picture. It wasn't a flag, it was a shirt. Yeah.
I think what will stand out for me was the thousands of people that took to the streets here in South Africa, not in their own country, but here in South Africa, on our streets, in the inner streets, celebrating that back home there's hope, that their country will be rebuilt once again, and that they can go back home. There's a sense of hope, a lot of disbelief and shock, and we heard it from the people that we spoke to, like, I never thought in my lifetime I'd see this, and thank you, they were grateful that this opportunity came, that they never thought that it would happen. And I think that we're going to see a lot more celebrations going forward. I think going into the weekend, we're going to see people continuing with the sentiments and slowly deciding where to from here for them. What's the future for them, and how do they play a part in this revolution, if you can call it.
Thank you very much, Hasina Gori. So we wrap it up from this desk and take you over to Peter.
So